Hey gang, it's Sunday, July 28th. I think it's the 28th. And I'm getting ready to cut a piece of metal. I got a piece of 3/8 of an inch thick aluminum that I'm going to put down on here to give me some extra rigidity to compensate for the original cutouts that they put here for the original swing open doors. And also I want my step to come out all the way to the edge of the body. So because of those two things, that's why I decided to put a piece of metal on top of here. And in order to find something really nice and rigid, I just decided on a piece of 3/8 thick inch aluminum. So we've got weird shape on this side. I don't know if this is parallel, and it's kind of hard to measure what I need from here out. So I cut this piece of wood. It's 9.5 inches wide, and it's a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll go with that, actually. And anyway, so this odd shape here, I thought I was going to scribe fit the metal to fit underneath there just right, but I think I'm just going to leave it like that and live with it. Because the aluminum is going to be 3/8 of an inch thick, right? So it's going to be higher than this. It's almost going to fill this gap up fully. So I'll be able to put a nice bead of whatever in there to close that, and that'll be fine. So if I leave that straight, then all I got to do is figure out what the profile of this is, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to scribe fit that. Let me show you what I'm going to use for that over here. Basically, it's a compass. I think it's in this drawer. Yeah, this is it right here. So this is designed, this is like one of them that I have. I've actually never used this one. Right? And this one here, this was my father's. And this is actually the original pencil that my father whittled down to fit in that thing. Let's try using this new guy here, since I've never used it. I got this on Amazon a while back for my niece for school. Actually, this is just kind of like, looks like a homemade rig deal here. I don't know what's up with it, but alright, we're going to do this. I think one day I'd like to cut off this other leg. And what's weird is this end of the tool here is on the wrong side of this tool in order for it to be a good quality scribe tool. I'll show you what I mean when we get out to the bus. So when you do scribe work, right? See what we have going on here? That screw is interfering with the, oops, no, sorry, it goes this way. I guess I'm wrong. Yeah, it is right. So, alright, forget what I said over there a minute ago. It's something I thought a while back and it just stuck into my head. So, what we're going to do here, we position our wood all the way as far to that corner as we can. And I probably should clamp it. I'll just hold it with my knee for now. And now we adjust this for the widest thing that we need, which right about there. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. And now, keeping the compass parallel with this wall back here. This has got to be kept, or I call it a compass, scribe. This tool has to be kept in line with that edge there, because if you turn it, it changes where it's going to write, right? So keeping it straight with that back wall, that's how you make your scribe line. So now, take a look at what we got going on here. This is going to actually be flat. You know what? Let's do this again if I can, because see what's going on here. We don't want that deviation because our metal's going to go up under there. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to rough cut this piece right now and follow this line all the way out to there, and then this piece of wood will go up in there closer, and then I'll come back to you. Alright, we're in the garage, and I thought I'd take a minute to show you how I'm going to cut this. I made this sled a good 30 years ago, I guess. It's beat to hell and been modified and messed with and used for different purposes, but it's got this piece of wood here that's a guide. It drops into this groove, and after an afterthought, I added this for another purpose. But really, it's this one here that holds it in the groove straight. So, right, it gives us a nice sled, and this piece of wood is a 90-degree, very, very accurate 90-degree. It took me a while to get it that close to the cut of the blade. So normally this thing is used by putting your piece up against it, and then you could rip or cross cut, or whatever your case is, right? But I want to cut this piece at this angle. This one here. No, this one here. I'm taking off less wood with this cut, so that's definitely the one we're going to do. So I'm going to come down, and firstly we're going to take this and pull it back to there, so that way the wood won't kick back on us if it gets a bit of a jam. I'm going to come down here and eyeball that line on the blade, which, because of the light coming, I can't really tell what I'm seeing here in the camera, but I'll do that offline, and I'll get that line right where I want it, and I'm going to cut light, so I'm not going to come up to the line, and then I'll make a pass, and then we'll see how the cut went. If the cut is parallel with that line, then I could move it over a hair and get up to the line, make my final cut. If I have to make an adjustment, I'll have some leeway to do that. Alright, so here's my rough cut, and it is so close to perfect. I'm just going to leave it, and just by coincidence, or I guess not so much coincidence, but just happens to work out that way. This is really all I got to do. Right? I do need to take a little bit off of there where that weld is, maybe not. I don't know. I'm just going to leave that. So now I've got my fit for the right side. The left side fit is that. So now I could take this guy. This is just a template from my template. Here's another piece of that same wood, but this one's actually long enough to fit in there. Okay? And now, let's see if the other side looks better. Yeah, that's a little cleaner. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with this odd cut. Okay? Right, piece of cake, right? Easier with two hands than it is with one. So I'm going to draw my line here. I'm going to cut this piece the same way I cut this one. Then I'll start cutting this piece by piece, trimming it a little at a time until I get it to fit in the opening. And since this is a 90-degree cut, this is why we're saving this one for last. This will be easy to trim little by little. Maybe I might make 6 or 8 trips back to the saw, but just be able to rest that against the fence and it'll be a piece of cake. And then when I have this piece of wood fitted just how I like it, then I'll trace this onto that piece of aluminum and cut that, and it'll fit perfectly. Alright, we're back at the bus, and got my piece of plywood trimmed to fit this side. Now let's see what we need here for length. I'm going to go to, let's see, oops, sorry. I'm going to be to there. So let's go to 37, I mean 31 and 5/8. So alright. So when you're using the sled, there's one thing you got to be real careful of is the space between your fence and here. You need to make sure that there's no chance that whatever you're cutting might get locked in here and spit back and hit you. So I'm going to make sure I loosen my fence, put her way back here. You never use your fence and a sled at the same time unless you do one thing first. You could put like a block of wood and clamp it to this way back here as a stop for your piece that you're cutting, and then as you advance your sled, the piece of wood is no longer pressing and it gives you this space, and then the wood could just drop and not bind the blade. So now, after all that, I forgot my measurement, so I'm gonna have to go back and check. But let me show you how I do this. So this is interesting that because I have this bevel, I can't measure from here to the blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the measuring on the back side from that end to the blade. Alright, so let me go back there and double check my measurement. Remember, measure twice and cut once. I usually measure about 3 times, 4. But we're going to trim this off. I think it was 31 and 5/8 if I remember, but I'm not positive, so I'm going to double check. We're going to cross cut this thing, and then we're going to give it a trial fit. Okay, I confirmed 31 and 5/8. I probably should write it down, but I've got it now. And silly me, what was I thinking, right? I just flipped this thing over. Since it's a parallel piece of wood at this point, I haven't trimmed this or this. So with it flipped over, now I can do this much easier. I'm going to measure 31 and 5/8, like so. If I had 2 hands, this would be a lot easier. When I put the camera down, I'm just going to do this. I'm not even going to mark the wood. I'll just move this over until I measure 31 and 5/8, and I'm going to use a tooth on the blade. Let's see what kind of blade I got here besides beat to hell. There's more than one tooth. You see how that tooth is cutting on the left side, right? And this one's on the right side, and left side, right side, left side, right side. Sometimes you'll have blades that are left, right, and flats. But whenever I do a cut, I measure to the side of this blade, this tooth. If I'm working on that side of the blade, that's the tooth I use for my measurement. Alright? Alright, so I got my piece of wood in position. I'm holding it firmly here. Alright? So let's see if we can do some live action. I'll put my phone down a second. Here we go. There you have it. So we're going to go do a test fit. I know this is going to be too big, and now I'm going to start guesstimating as I do test fits to see how much more I need to trim off until I get the fit that I'm looking for. So let's see what's going to go on here. I'm going to drop that down in there. So if I took 1/8 of an inch off, I think I'd be pretty safe with that, because I actually did measure 31.5. Whatever we do, it's going to have to fit up in there. Let's try it this way. Alright, let's make this a parallel line. Alright, so yeah, about 1/8 of an inch. Alright, so let's go trim 1/8. And that's easy, because that's the thickness of our blade, right? We can come over here and put our wood in line with the right side of the blade. And that would be 1/8 right there. Alright, so we're up against that. Move that over here. Alright, do that with 2 hands and cut that and come back. Okay, so we're touching back here and we've got our line parallel in the back. Alright, and that looks fairly parallel. We're touching right there. So if I were doing some fine fit cabinet work, what I would do is take a pencil without it being attached to anything. Let me show you what I mean. And I would just hold it by hand, and you know, I might just put it flat and use the thickness of the pencil to give me how much of a space from the sides to the pencil line, or I might hold it slightly canted and use my fingers as a tool, right, to give me what I want. But just eyeballing this thing, looks like I could actually take 1/16 of an inch from here. This would be easier, right, if this piece of metal was not in our way, messing with my ability to put a scribe line. So we're just going to wing this. So we're looking at that, and I want to take 1/16 of an inch off of that up to this point and have nothing taken off. And then I'll try and see what I want to do next. I think I might actually come back and trim this a little bit. No, I guess I can't, because I can't really drop down in, because this is going to interfere. So when I feed the aluminum piece in here, it's going to have to slide in this way. So yeah. Alright, so let me cut that, and that'll give me an opportunity to reapproach this and think what I want to do. Okay, so I did my trim. This is a little bit more parallel. I mean, I just barely shaved it, and I have options of what I want to do. So I would like to take off about, we're going to have to take off roughly the difference from this point to that point, left to right, because that's the interference, right? So let me do a little scribe here just for fun. Okay. See if I can do this so you can see. I'm going to keep this up against the side. Okay, where'd it go? Alright, so that gives us that angle to cut. Take this back to the saw. I'm going to do a repeat performance. I'm going to actually cut a little bit further than that line because I want to leave a gap. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to eyeball that piece. And I'm not going to be able to rest this up against this fence piece, which will be a little bit precarious. Ideally, I would want to do it this way and rest that. Now I can't see my line. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and do it. This is just a shave. Alright, so we're going to come down here and eyeball that line and set this piece to the angle it needs to be and lightly trim that piece. And I'm going to watch the cut, and if my cut is going along that line like I need to, I'll just bump this thing over slightly, a little bit more and a little bit more until I get what I want. Okay, we're really close. I mean, technically that's good enough, right? Because I want to leave a little space for caulk bead in there. So, I mean, I'd like that to be a little bit looser, which means I need to take off some more from this side. Now we're touching, actually we're touching over here, so trimming that will do nothing, because it won't move over to the left, and it's still leaving a gap there, so that's touching. Now I got to decide, when it comes down to working with a piece of 3/8 thick piece of aluminum, it's not going to be as easy as trimming this piece of wood. So I think what I'm going to do is call this side done and then work on this side by taking off a 1/16 of an inch on all that. Yeah, let's give that a shot. Worst comes to worst, I'll ruin this piece of wood and start over, right? Because this is just a template. Alright, we're back at the table saw. I'm getting ready to make this cut. So I got a little trick. This has gotten worn over the years. I got some play in it. I'm going to use that to my advantage. We're going to take this, and I need to take a 1/16 of an inch off that piece of wood, right? So I'm going to set it up against the blade, right? And then I'm going to move my sled up, well, move the wood back, I guess I should say, until it's touching there, and get that in there. I'm going to pull my piece of wood out, my sled I'm going to pull to the left, right? We've got everything we want. I'm going to hold this down. Now I'm going to fire up the table saw, push over, and then it'll give me about a 32nd of an inch play that's in here. I'm going to give that a trim. Okay, so we trimmed off a 32nd of an inch off of that twice to give us our 1/16 of an inch. So let's see. We've got some threatening weather here. Might be raining soon, but it's cooled it off quite nicely. So I am kind of rushing a little bit. So we're all the way up in there. We can actually come back a hair, and we've got just what we needed. So now I could put a weight on here to hold this for me, or just use my hand. Now I can see, do I really want this thing to come out that far? I think I do. See, I'm also thinking about putting a bevel on the end of this piece of aluminum, when this is aluminum, right? This side is sticking out a little bit more than I'd like. So I gotta decide what I want to do. When I figure that out, I'm gonna cut that. I think I want to trim that side a little bit. Okay, so I did a test fit. This piece protrudes out 3/16 of an inch at this point, and that piece protrudes out 7/16 of an inch. So it tells me I need to take 1/4 of an inch off of this and nothing off of that. So how we're doing this is I've marked this at 0. It's my little pencil line, my pen line right there. And then I did the same thing here. Where are you? Alright? And then after I marked it, with the wood sitting here straight, I pushed this out. That's a little bit less than 1/4. We're going to start with that and give this a trim. So we should be cutting a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, close to 3/16 from there. And when I get down to here, it should be cutting nothing. Alright, so here's all that's left. This is the kerf that was up here. So it's that much more than my 1/8 inch blade. And then down here it just barely skims. So let's go see how that fits. Okay. So we're going to cut out a little bit to leave room for caulk. Alright. So let's get the tape measure out. So that is about 1/4, oopsie, it's about 1/4 of an inch. And here we've got about 1/4 of an inch. It's close enough. Going with it. So now I'm going to transfer this shape onto my piece of aluminum and cut that beast. So my thought right now is I'm going to use my standard carbide wood cutting blade, which is pretty beat anyway, on the aluminum, along with this stuff which works like magic for cutting aluminum. Tough Magic aluminum cutting fluid. It is incredible how much this helps cutting aluminum. It's actually for, you know, milling and drilling and tapping and whatever, doing machine work. But we're going to give it a shot on a table saw. But the challenge is that the blade spins so fast and there's a breeze of air blowing out from the blade that it might have a tendency of pushing the Tap Magic, blowing it away from where I need it. But we're going to give it a shot. We're going to make some light cuts. Let's see if I can grab this thing over here with one hand. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. Let's see how straight it is. Alright, if we've got a bow, we do have a little bit of bow here. We want to work that bow to our advantage, not our disadvantage. This side here lays pretty flat, right? So it's got a hollow in the middle. And I know my table saw is very true. So we want to make this up. So let me get my Sharpie. top. All right. So this will be left. This will be right. All right. So yeah, it's way overkill on the precautionary measures, but we can't make a mistake on this. The wood we can easily throw away, but this is some serious beans. Okay. So let's see what we got. We got a plasma cut on both sides, and this is a middle piece, 10 inches, damn near on the button. Okay, this is an extruded piece. This is very, 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 very straight, right? You're gonna have to use a dial caliper to look for deviation on these original edges. But we know this is not going to be perfectly straight, because that's just a hand-cut plasma cut. And it kind of doesn't matter, because here's my template code. We're going to be cutting this thing all over the place. I guess it does matter. If we come all the way down here, alright, so my nephew George did a fine job cutting this. I'm sure he used a square. Alright, so I'm going to give this a trim anyway on the aluminum, just so I've got a nice clean edge with this. And then we're going to come back here and figure out how we're going to do this. Pretty much going to be the same process of how I did the wood, with the exception that this is going to be much more difficult to cut, and much more likely that the blade's going to grab and push. So rather than holding this thing by hand, I'm going to be using clamps and other devices, whatever, on my sled to make sure we don't have a bind. And then when we do our cuts, we're going to be starting from almost nothing and just do a scratch cut and raising the blade a little at a time, right? And we're going to go by feel. And if we get any indication that it's starting to melt the aluminum, which would be really bad because that'll cause a bind and a kickback. So if we get any indication of that, we'll stop and then we'll come back and just use a jigsaw or something. But for starters, I'm going to trim that side straight, and I guess I could also do a trim along this end, because actually like this, because we no longer have a parallel piece, right? We just trimmed this wood, so we're a little bit smaller on this side than the other. So I can try doing this skull cut. I will start by cutting it straight at this width, and then come back and do the trim like I did on this. So I'm saying this out loud now as I'm thinking what I want to do. Okay, so we're getting ready to make our cut. I've wiped Tap Magic all over the blade on the side. I've got it on this as well. And I've got my metal clamped to the sled, so we won't have any movement. I mean, it would be better if we could clamp it here too, but I don't have the means for that. And just show you what I got going on here. When I made this sled, I added that piece of wood there, so I could actually do that. Clamp stuff to it. And I'll show you, had another jig on here one time where I had to put a screw in it for an adjustable angle cut that I was doing. And here's the other stop for that. There were two, somewhere on here, there was two places that I had two different angles to cut, so I had a piece of ply to go over there. Anyway, enough being said there. Let me give this a shot. Let's see if you can see that there. So it cut just like I was cutting a piece of wood, actually. You can see where the smooth area where my blade cut, and here's the area that my blade did not cut from the original grindings that were on there. So we're in great shape. I'm going to bump this over a hair more and give it another trim. Alright, so
around the blade. A little bit of extra tap magic. And we're going to give it cut number 2. Of course, we're just barely skimming this thing, and that's how I want to do it. I'm going to sneak up on a clean edge is what I'm going to do. Alright, so we got a clean cut, and this, I'm quite sure, is the finished cut that this blade is giving. And I guess that's a combination of a little bit of melting, maybe, or a blade rattle. But yeah, that's the cut, man. So I'm gonna just leave that. Every cut's got a risk to it, right? So we're just gonna take that as good enough for our purposes. I thought it was gonna come out a little bit nicer, but yeah, what the heck, right? So now I think my next cut is going to be the long cut. We're going to do basically the same process here, but I don't know how I'm going to hold that metal. Let me think about what I'm going to do there. Alright, so we've got a plan where I do transfer the lines on there, and we should be removing the line. Let me get this thing to focus. Right. And that's going to give me my straight cut at the bigger dimension. So there'll be more to trim off this side later. Next, we're going to do, I got my fences already set. We're going to lower our blade down to just trim a little bit. We're going to apply some more tap magic on the blade. And we're going to apply tap magic to the underneath side of this. And we're going to give it a pass and see how it goes. Alright, went through. Went fine. I regulated my cut speed, my feed speed a little bit. Thought maybe I should try a little bit faster feed speed to keep the temperature down, so I'm always approaching cooler metal. This did warm up a little bit, so I'm going to give it a couple minutes to cool until it gets back. It's a little bit warm. It's about body temperature right there. This is cooler, so give that a couple minutes to cool off so we don't have any heat issues that we're going to create. So that's about a 1/16 of an inch cut, maybe a little more. And it was just like cutting a piece of wood, pretty much. I did feel a little bit of a pushback from the blade when my feed speed was a little on the high side, so I'm going to make sure I keep that a little bit lower. But can't see it, I guess. There's our line, there's our cut. So it's extremely close to where I want it to be. Alright, I'm going to give it another go. So I went for it on my third pass. Here's my kerf. This rides off the top of the blade. And here's the piece I cut off. Dude, that sucker's pretty hot. Can't even hold it. So here's the finish. It's not what I would call great, but it's good enough for what I'm doing. You know, hey, if I had a better blade, there's a blade that was made for this, it might come out better. Here's what I'm looking at right now. Did it work? It did work at the time. way is about the right. Didn't really warp it, not much anyway, this way, but on this direction it warped it. So it's something to watch out for when you're doing this. Alright, so here we are over here. We got nothing, no line left there. And then we got our 3/16 to cut off of this side. So this is going to be interesting. Since this is a straight cut like this, right? If I put this, attach this to something, another piece of something. I think I'm going to do this. I'm probably going to just do this by hand. Now, if I attach this piece of aluminum to something flush here, and give it how much I want to cut here from this side, when I feed this through this same setting, it'll trim that much off that side and give me a straight line. But in order to do that method, I have to attach, which means like drilling holes in this or something. I can't clamp it because the clamps will get in the way. I guess if I had some clamps that the little tips would not hit. I think I might have some of those actually. Would that work? No, those things are too tall to sit down in that groove. So that won't work. And I could glue it, screw it, or just do it by hand. So the way to do that by hand, I've done this before too with wood. Actually the first time I'm cutting such a thick piece of wood in the house. Is with the table fence set as it is, begin a cut. It's not going to really cut anything from there. It might make some noise. And then I'll eyeball over here and maybe use a finger or something to hold that out, the amount that I want to cut from here. And just give it a few passes. That's what I'm going to give it a shot doing. So let this cool off a little bit more. It's just barely body temperature over here. Give it some more tap magic, and we're going to give that a trim cut. Alright, I got it. Got metal all over me. But and I'll show you how I did this. And it's going to be very true, which I'm going to check here in a minute. Alright. That's a pretty straight cut. So what I did, I went with the blade that height. And again, we were not cutting anything in the beginning. And I estimated how much I needed over here, just by eye, in order to give me 3/16 over here, which is about the thickness of this wood. And I did it a little on the light side. And I gave it a pass. I came back and did it again. And the second time I did it, I was watching my line to help me make sure I was taking the right amount off. And then when I got to this area, I slipped this piece of wood in there. So that gave me something really positive as a guide for the remainder of the cut. And if you look right there, you can see there's just a tiny piece of line there. So real happy with what I got there so far. It's a little nerve-wracking doing this because you know, you run the risk of hurting yourself every time you use a power saw, right? Especially when you're using a wood blade to cut aluminum. So the tap magic works wonders. I didn't feel any pushback, just went right through there. And the cut is, hey, that's what the cut is, right? It's not that pretty, but if I wanted something pretty, I'd have to do that. You know what? If I used a jigsaw, it wouldn't come out that good. With a metal cutting jigsaw blade, which would be one of the right tools to use for this. Alright. So another choice would be to use a smaller diameter blade on the saw, like this 7 1/4 inch blade, because the smaller diameter blade is more resistant to flex. Right? So as it's in there doing a little chatter going through there, this would be more rigid. Or if I had a thicker blade, right? A thicker body blade. So that's that. So now let me see if I can figure out how I'm going to do these other cuts. Oh, let me size it up to my template, see how close I got. I mean, that's a damn near right there, man, you know? Okay, so super happy with that. It's coming along great. There's a burr on here that's keeping me from actually. It's got a little bit of a wow in the middle, but that's good enough. Alright, so now we're going to have to cut this guy. This is our most precarious thing we've got to do. I think what I might do is put the sled in and cut this piece off first. So my more precarious cut here, this angle one, will be less of a cut. Alright, we're getting down to it now. We're matching the template perfectly. I took a file to the edges so I won't cut myself. I probably should have filed this edge too, but I didn't. Wanted to share a trick I learned. I took some brake clean and I got off the tap magic that was on the surface and put my template up here, and then I backed the template off a little bit from where it needs to be, and I took my Sharpie pen and I put a black area. Then I put the template back where it needs to be and I scratched a mark on it, so I've got a very fine line that I can come up and meet. And I already proved that the tap magic doesn't take off that Sharpie. And it did the same thing on this end. So when I trim these two pieces, we're going to go do a test fit. And it should fit right in there because the plywood does. Alright, so we're going to set this up here to cut. My last cut, I went ahead and just did the full height of the blade and pushed it through. And it cut fine. I had no issues with it. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to set this where it needs to be. Going to pull this back here so we don't have risk of kickback. Right? The angle won't change on us. And put this exactly where it needs to be. I'm going to put two clamps on this side so this thing can't move. We're going to trim this off. Maybe in first pass. Maybe not. And then we're going to come back and do the same operation we're doing over here on this end. Alright, so here's our method. We've got our straight edge on the line, and yeah, it looks like we're off a little bit. Alright, so we're going to make some little adjustment to that and get us right on the line. Okay? Wait. Yeah, we're off just a hair. But I'm going to get that straight. Alright, so we got to come back on this side. Actually, I moved, you know, because of a little bit of play in this thing. I checked it again. Push it over to the left and right. Gosh, it's so close. Okay. Yeah, we got to go back on this side just a hair. Okay, how's that? That's straight. The line is a little crooked, but we're cutting too much now, so I gotta move over to the left. Alright, how about that? I'm on the right side of the blade here. Right, so we're a little bit shy of being where we want the cut. So I'm going to go with that. Set that straight edge off to the side. Get this thing out of there. Okay, we're up against here. Tighten up our clamps. Alright. They look good underneath there. Clamps are not interfering. Alright, so this ought to go right through there. So I'm going to lower the blade down some. So we don't want to chop down as we're cutting. We want to kind of slice as we're going through. But at the same time, we don't want the blade too low that it'll try to push the aluminum up. So kind of a happy medium right around there someplace. I'm going to have to invest in a little tripod. I wish you could have seen that. So that just went right along the edge of that line. I don't think that is the remnants of the line, but actually there's the remnant of the line right there. That's how close I got it. So let's see. Bring the template out here. Okay. That is so close. Okay. So we're going to give this little guy a trim right here. And we're going to go give it a test fit. Okay, man. It's our first test fit. And it's right where we wanted it. Okay. The one thing I just noticed that I couldn't have seen with the plywood is we have about a 16th or 1/8 inch so of unevenness between this piece of aluminum and the step. The warp is probably in the step, but it flexes enough. I can feel it touch. So when I bolt that thing down, it's going to be perfect. So we got our step. We're looking great, man. So next, I'm going to get to work on this door jamb after I get this installed. That is, I guess I'll finally install that. Glue it down and everything. Yeah. So I'm going to bolt this in place. I've got choices. Since this material is 3/8 of an inch thick, I can thread it and put screws from the bottom in there. Oh, what do we got going on here? Oh, there's what our unevenness is being caused from, right there. So let me trim the bottom edge of this. I'm going to cut a 45 on the bottom of that to make way for that weld. It'll sit a little flatter. Alright, glad I bent down here and looked at that. But anyway, I was saying I can thread this and put bolts from the bottom, or I can drill clean through this and put countersunk flathead screws on the top and nuts on the bottom. I got to think about that. If I put screws on top, and I put some kind of, flathead screws from the top, and I put some kind of finish on this. If I ever want to take this out, I'll have to take the finish off because the screw heads will spin. Got to think about that one. So let's see what's on this side here. If there's anything. Yeah, got a little bit of a thing hitting right there. I can see it. It's got a little bit of a rise there, but it's pretty flat. So yeah, let me put 45 on the bottom side of this whole thing right here and retry to fit this in there. All right, cutting that little 45 right there. It's pretty much doing what we need to do. So we got some, there's no play in here at all. This is tight up against here. Right there. I think I should trim that piece just a little so it's just not up against it. It's the only thing touching, I'm pretty sure, right there. Give me a little bit more space. So this steel is all crooked. It was bent pretty bad. I straightened it out with a floor jack and a 2x4. And it ain't perfect, but yeah. Alright. Yeah, I think I'll take a hair off right there. So I took a 1/16 inch off of this little piece right here, and it actually helped out by moving that little corner back a little bit, since this is now wider. So now it more or less matches back in there better. And we got good gap all the way around. We got a little bit of a gap right there. Where'd you go? Right there. So, and it's still got some rock to it, but that's where it's going, because there's nothing else I can do. I guess I could cut a little bit more of that 45, a little bit bigger. Yeah, I guess I'll do that. It looks like it's sitting on the weld. So I'll trim the 45 just a little bit more. I'm going to call it quits. And then I'm going to seriously consider how we're going to bolt this thing down.